But we're not live yet.
All right.
But I get it. I get that he donated a lot. And another thing I don't like. Thank you so much for
All right. Good morning, folks. Good to see everybody this morning. I want to begin by this executive committee meeting by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the traditional unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people, and we are all treaty people in Nova Scotia. All right. I'll just check to make sure we have folks. It looks like we do. I want to thank the Deputy Mayor for a gift from Guides Canada. We all know these. Are we into that time of year now? Is that? Yeah, so it's cookie season. Be generous. What kind of these? Oh, these are the good ones. Okay. All right. All right, we'll begin with looking at the, let me just get my screen going. We can begin by looking at the minutes of August 22nd. I just did it? Moved and seconded, all in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Order of business. Madam Clerk, anything?
Mr. Mayor, there are no additions or deletions.
Thank you. Business arising, calls. Oh, yeah, the order of business has circulated. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Seconded by Councillor Morris. All in favor? Aye. Carried. Thank you. Declaration of conflicts of interest, reconsideration, rescission, deferred business, tabled matters. All good. Correspondence, Madam Clerk?
The clerk's office has received no correspondence.
All right. Petitions? Presentations, none. Information items brought forward under reports 12.1.1, race and gender data, and safety of Asian women and non-binary people. So, we have a short presentation. That's Amy, is it? Yes, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Perfect. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me this morning. Just going to get my notes up here. Okay. Perfect. Okay, so yes, as Mr. Mayor mentioned, I'm here to do a short presentation on the report supporting the safety of Asian women and non-binary residents and race, gender, and equity-based data.
So Amy, if I could just give us your title as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. So my name's Amy Brierly. I work in the Public Safety Office. I'm a program coordinator for the Safe City and Safe Public Spaces program. So the background of this report, it originated from two motions that came from the Women's Advisory Committee. And so the Vice Chair of the Women's Advisory Committee had brought these motions forward in regard to anti-Asian racism in Halifax. And the two pieces of the report address resources that the municipality can implement to better support the safety of Asian women, non-binary, and gender-diverse residents, and to explore ways that we can identify and collect race-based data more generally regarding the safety, well-being, and in public spaces of racialized folks, and how we disaggregate that data so that we can understand folks' experiences. So today I'll be doing a quick overview of the current state, where we're at right now, what we heard from community, what other municipalities are doing, what we are doing, and then some future considerations. So our current state. We know that data is one piece of the puzzle in helping the municipality understand and respond to safety needs and experiences of a diversity of residents. So through writing the report, we understand that currently we don't collect data in a way that allows us to understand and respond to these issues meaningfully. And although the Women's Advisory Committee and Diversity and Inclusion and African Nova Scotian Affairs Integration Office and the Public Safety Office and the Safe City Program are making inroads on these issues, we don't currently have strong relationships with the diverse Asian communities that exist in HRM. So for the community engagement piece of the report, through work with Future Ancestors Services, Inc., we hosted and engaged with women and gender nonconforming people of East Asian and Southeast Asian descent to discuss anti-Asian racism and safety in public spaces. So the insights shared in this engagement really lay a foundation for our future collaboration with Asian communities to address these issues. We also engaged with stakeholders internally when we were looking at the data pieces of the report. So one piece of the work was a jurisdictional scan of what other municipalities are doing to support the safety of Asian women and non-binary residents through information resources. So some of the really promising examples that we found in the jurisdictional scan created resources like these, the ones that we see on the screen here. So public art installations to share the histories and the stories of a diverse Asian community. Public education campaigns, bylaw changes to address street harassment, and development of community reporting platforms for racism and harassment. These are just some examples of some of the approaches that other municipalities have taken. So in our engagement, we heard from folks that this conversation isn't something that we've done regularly as a municipality, and that we really need to build stronger working relationships with Asian communities in HRM. We also heard very clearly that we do have to implement information resources to support the safety of Asian folks in HRM. So we have some ideas of how to do that from our research and from our community conversations, but we really know that this needs to be led by community. And we also know that addressing issues of safety and racism alongside communities who have been historically marginalized and to this day marginalized requires resources to build and sustain trust and collaboration. And while we do have the capacity and resources to start some of this work, we don't currently have the resources to sustain the work. So what we are doing, the Safe City program will lead the development of a community-led process to develop resources to support the safety of Asian women and non-binary folks in the municipality. We work with Transit quite regularly in terms of the campaigns that Transit is doing through the Transit Code initiative. And so we've spoke with Transit and we continue to work to integrate messaging to address anti-Asian racism in future anti-discrimination campaigns that Transit runs. Diversity and Inclusion has started the work of developing a multilingual policy, which is important when we think about resources that we create being able to be interpreted by folks who may not speak English as their first language and speak a diversity of Asian languages. So they'll continue that work. The Safe City program will continue to work with business units to explore ways to incorporate voluntary data initiatives regarding women and gender diverse people's experiences of safety in public spaces. And as you folks probably know through other presentations and work, we are currently doing consultations to inform the women and gender equity strategy that's being led through the Diversity and Inclusion Office. And these conversations will also provide qualitative data from conversations with communities across HRM and help to identify priorities for action. So some future considerations when we're thinking about responding to the need for resources to support the safety of Asian women and non-binary folks is the data piece. So There are some key municipal data collection processes that, if they are enhanced and resourced, could be really meaningful sources of robust disaggregated race, gender, and other equity-based data. So the resident survey, the 20-year community vision that's upcoming, and reports of violence, harassment, and safety concerns made to 311. So these are all avenues through which the municipality is currently collecting data that pertains to the safety of women and gender diverse folks. But currently, there are not enough resources to ensure that Asian women and non-binary folks and other racialized folks are well represented in that data to therefore be able to be disaggregated to understand their experiences. And just a note that through the research in the report as well, that we did speak with the Office of Equity and Anti-Racism Initiatives with the province, and we know that the Provincial Dismantling Racism and Hate Act does speak a little bit to data collection, and that might be another consideration for us to look at in the future, how we align our work with the standards that might come through that act. So that's it for my presentation. And yeah, any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you very much for that report, and thank you for the work that you're doing. Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I guess the first question I have is more of a procedural one, and because this did originate with the Women's Advisory Committee, will they have the opportunity to see this presentation as well? And just wondering how that's going to work. And just at a higher level, I guess the data collection is the challenge here, because it relies so much on self-identification, and that can also be a challenge. So appreciate that we're collaborating with the communities and the province to make sure that we get all the information that we need.
So on the point, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, around speaking with the Women's Advisory Committee. So I do think so, councillor, that we'd be able to share this presentation with the committee. And I did inform Christine that we have the presentation today, and so yeah, but we should maybe have a discussion as well. That's a possibility.
Yeah, I think so, because you know, where this originated with Women's Advisory, and it was you know, a discussion. But then this really all stemmed from the start of the pandemic, and where we saw just anecdotally that there was a lot of anti-Asian racism that was on the increase in the community. So that was sort of what spurred this ask for this work. But no, I think you guys are on the right path on this one, and glad to see that it's finally on the radar, and we're going to start collecting some data. Thank you.
Councillor, do you want to put there is a motion. Do you want to put the recommendation on the floor?
Sure, I can do that. I move that the Executive Standing Committee forward the staff information report dated October 13th, 2022 to Regional Council for information.
Second.
Second by Deputy Mayor Lovelace.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Amy. This is a great report. Yeah, as Councillor Blackburn just alluded to, certainly there were a number of anecdotal and just some narratives. It was quite evident during the pandemic that this really needed to be addressed. So grateful that Christine brought this forward at the Women's Advisory. When I consider voluntary you know, in self-identification as far as these incidents are concerned, I do think that it's also important to request details from our police forces. Certainly there are folks that will call 311 and ask for clarification. You know, this happened to me, is this permitted? What, you know, wondering about, you know, from a safety perspective, whether or not this is an issue that municipal call agents can assist with. I do know of a situation that came to me from a resident where there was violence on a transit bus. And of course, that incident did not go through 311, it went to police. So I think we also want to make sure that we're working with our police force and highlighting the need to collect this data. and through the Public Safety Office, obviously, getting a better understanding of the implications to ridership, in particular, to transit, because as bystanders are there, bystanders, they do have the opportunity to change the trajectory of that violence or that harassment that is in the public space, but they may not necessarily have the tools or the resources to do that, and then may also be the recipients of that violence. So people are hesitant to step up. So I just wanted to get an understanding from you, as because bystander, obviously, awareness is part of this, needs to be part of this program, and just from the Public Safety Office, get an understanding of what would that look like? How do we actually advance that in our public spaces? Thank you so much, Amy.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Deputy Mayor. Thank you for the question. So bystander intervention training was one of the pieces that came up in the jurisdictional review as a common tool and a common resource that municipalities do pursue in order to address racism in public spaces. I agree, Deputy Mayor, that is a key resource. The idea would be that through developing this working group with representatives from diverse Asian communities, that we would be able to work together to prioritize how we would roll something out like bystander intervention training. So I also know it's something on the radar with transit and with other issues, I guess, in terms of bystander intervention training. So
Okay. And police, data from police?
Yes, data from police. So in the report, we do outline the initiatives that HRP and RCMP are currently taking to collect race and gender-based data. So while I can't speak to the details of their initiatives, we do include some information that they really are working to increase the capacity within their reporting systems to be able to document and report on instances of racism and harassment.
Okay. Thank you so much, Amy.
Yeah, I think.
Thank you very much. I would only echo the thanks for the work that you're doing and the importance of that work. And, when I look at some of the things you mentioned that were potential support services, things like public art, which we have done on the Halifax Commons, for example, for the First Nations, African Nova Scotian, LGBTQ, SLI groups. I think that's really important. And so there's a number of things we can do. I think one of the things that we can do around this table is that we can, embody the kind of behavior that we want to see in the people around us, right? So not just elected officials, but business leaders, not-for-profit organizations, folks with a profile, and really make sure that we don't allow any kind of hateful language or behaviors to take root in the community if we see them, right? So I think, we all have a responsibility in that regard as well. All right, ready for the question, colleagues? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you, that carries. Thank you, Amy. Okay, item 12.1.2 is the Halifax Regional Council meeting schedule. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll put this on the floor. I move that Executive Standing Committee recommend that Halifax Regional Council approve the proposed 2023 Regional Council meeting schedule as outlined in Attachment 1 of the staff report dated August 31st, 2022.
Second by Councillor Mason. I see Mr. Clerk has joined us. Is there anything you want to say, or just to be supportive of the question? Okay. So everybody's looked at the agenda and cleared their calendar accordingly for next year. Ready for the question?
Question.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. 12.1.3, Councillor Expense Accounts Revisions. Councillor Mason, you brought this forward. Do you want to take that away?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I move that the Executive Standing Committee recommend that Regional Council direct the Chief Administrative Officer to administer the proposed council expense budget by, 1, combining the funds from the current budgets for advertising and promotion out-of-town travel, conferences, and councillor newsletters in a combined amount of $248,000, and 2, commence in fiscal year 2023-24 allocating the combined funds equally amongst councillors. I so move.
Second, Councillor Blackburn. Councillor Mason.
I think it's what we asked for, and I've discussed it with most of council, and I think this, I agree with the contention in the report that this makes council expenses clearer and more accountable. So I'd ask for committee support.
Thank you. Councillor Russell.
Thank you very much. So we have a number of things that we do as councillors, and some of them involve going to NSFM or various other things. And some of the councillors do this faithfully, and some of them don't. And that's fine. I'm just wondering, does that mean that those of us who do go to FCM or NSFM or any of the other things that we go to will have less funds available to do that? If it is combined and then split 16 ways, then it seems to me that there would be a less amount to be able to accommodate it.
Good day, sir.
Good morning, Dave Harley, Director of Accounting and Financial Reporting. So when we looked at this, we did recognize that there are certain positions or certain council members who are appointed to be members of boards for both FCM and NSFM. So when those positions are appointed and it's a requirement for the councillor to attend those meetings, we've broken those funds out to make sure we have those available for them to do that travel, not included within that allocation for everyone else. So it's for those members who aren't appointed and would still like to travel. They have the ability to do that using those funds that are now been allocated to them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate the work on this, Dave. Thanks so much. I do just, I do take an issue with a statement on page 2. And this is just something that I have experienced being in this position as deputy mayor, and where it states that as the deputy mayor, as Councillor Blackburn and Councillor Mason can attend to, we are moving throughout the municipality on behalf of the mayor's office and representing the mayor. Certainly outside of the province, the mayor's office is providing a reimbursement to the council support office. However, as we travel inside the municipality, there is no reimbursement to the council support office. And I think it's important for us to understand that the council support office is funding the deputy mayor to represent the mayor's office. And I've enjoyed it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for sending me throughout the municipality on your behalf and on behalf of Regional Council. I've certainly enjoyed the experience and learned a lot. But from a brass tacks perspective, I think it's important for us to realize that with 16 councillors and limited funds, there is definitely a disconnect as far as the position of deputy mayor is being funded by the council support office. And so I was just wondering if you had a comment about that, based on the fact that the staff report says that all additional work is covered by the mayor's office, and that's actually not the case.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So in looking at that, our understanding was that the majority of those costs were actually being covered off by the mayor's office. So we'll have to go back and look at that if that's not necessarily the case. If part of it is as we're coming through to our budget season, if there is additional requirements that are there for the deputy mayor, it could be something that would be brought forward through the budget process to allocate some additional funds to that as they're required to meet the needs of that office. But as we currently stand, we don't have anything specifically identified within this to fund those.
Right, exactly, because the fund is actually the travel account within the council support office for council, for the councillor, and not necessarily for deputy mayor. So that's actually not separated out. So that is something that we should take back and consider at regional council when we discuss our budget. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anybody else? Ready? Are you voting or? Okay, I don't see a name on the thing here. That's the concern I have. Is it? Pardon me? Yeah, I don't see your name on this. You're saying that the name is on some of the screens? Yeah, all I have is Deputy Mayor Lovelace here. Councillor Hensby.
Thank you much, Mr. Mayor. And yes, I had the same troubles when I was deputy mayor 14 years ago. So don't forget, I was also did that capacity. My question, though, in regards to the report talks about nothing about the per diems that the council's office gets from the Water Commission as well as the Bridge Commission. Are those per diems also going to be calculated, tabulated, and distributed amongst all the councilors, even though very few of the councilors sit on those boards?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we did not look at the per diems that are coming in from those groups, so they would not be included within what we've recommended here in the report, so that, no, they would not be brought in and allocated out based on that.
Okay, I think that's something for more. Anyway, it's part of the revenues going into the office, and we're looking at the revenues in the council's office and how to be distributed. I think we should be looking at all the revenues and not just expenses. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? You can just raise your hand if you have an issue. I think we're having technical difficulties, Krista. All right. Ready for the question? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. 12.1.4, Annual Workforce Report. Councillor Russell.
Thank you very much. I move that the Executive Standing Committee recommend that Halifax Regional Council direct the Chief Administrative Officer to 1, prepare a supplemental report that includes A, the number of involuntary departures, B, the turnover and retention rates, C, where turnover is defined as the number of hires in a period compared to, that should be indented under turnover, where turnover is defined as the number of hires in a period compared to the number of employees at the end of that period. The new turnover rate, the number of both voluntary and involuntary departures, the number of training programs offered and which are mandatory, the number of training sessions delivered, both mandatory and optional, the number of mandatory training sessions that are still required to be taken, where training classes are required as a matter of employment. For example, with police, fire, and transit, the number of training classes and the number of new hires as a result. The vacancy rate at the time that the report is created, average overtime per employee, average absenteeism per employee, total number of absent hours, the dollar value of that, and the prorated budget amount. The number of safety incidents reported as the number of WCB claims filed, succession metrics for mid-level management positions and above, including the number of Ready 4 candidates and the number of Ready in 2 to 4 year candidates. 2, that this information is reported both across the organization and per business unit. And 3, that this information is included in future annual workforce reports. So move.
Second?
Second, Councillor Blackburn. Councillor Russell.
Thank you very much. When I had a look at the annual workforce report, as people heard, I saw that there were a number of areas where we could use more data, where we had more data in the past, and it would be helpful to have that data in the future. So this is simply setting out a list of the data that it would be helpful to have and breaking it down in such a way that it would be useful for us to be able to understand what's going on across the organization at a fairly detailed level. One of the comments was made that this is telling staff how to do their work, and I disagree with that. I think this is telling staff the data that I would like to see. And so this is an opportunity for us as a committee or as council to say this is what we would like to see, and we can add or remove or change or whatever any of the items on here. But having a look into the organization at the department level as well as at the broad level would, I think, be very helpful, where in the report that we saw, for example, hires were shown on a per department basis, and departures were shown across the organization. And the report that we saw only showed the voluntary departures. It didn't show the involuntary departures. That led me down the path of building this list of items. Anyway, so I simply would like to see this information. Recognizing that we have the report already, I've asked for it to come as a supplemental report, as well as be built into future annual workforce reports. If the supplemental report is not possible or would take an onerous amount of time, because the data might not be able to be collected at this point, then that's fine too. But this would at least provide a defined point for us to be able to move forward from. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Caroline, I see you're here for a reason, I assume. I just want to get your thoughts on this, in terms of how onerous it might be, and what might be required, or if it's the best way, or the only way.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Caroline Blair-Smith, Deputy CAO Corporate Services. Mr. Mayor, through you to the councillor. First of all, I appreciate the list of the data. I too would like to see this data. We're very interested in making data-driven decisions in HR. I do understand as well that you did make some queries and did not receive the information you asked for, so I apologize for that. That's not usually the way it rolls in HR, so we'll make sure we address that. So for the first sort of part of your list, most of those things in the past we've pulled from SAP. And when we've pulled those from SAP, it's been very apparent to us that the data is not clean. And so we've manually gone through to check that data. We do now have EC, which we're very excited about, and we will be able to pull that data with great confidence. The data will exist from July forward in that very clean manner. So in the future, you will see that information. To pull now would involve going back prior to July, trying to clean that data and combine. That wouldn't be my recommendation. I think we might add end up with some skewed data there. There is some information you've asked for that I would struggle to provide, and that is very manual information and would require me pulling quite a number of staff off current work to provide. Most of that data is around training. So currently we run a manual training department, and it is quite literally 1 + 2 + 3 have attended this training. We are looking forward and preparing for LMS in the very near future, we hope, and then that will be a very easy pull. That is the same with mandatory training for employment. So for example, training you have to take, whether it's something around safety or something around police or fire, that training does not exist, that training data does not exist centrally right now. LMS will allow us to pull that data in centrally, so that will be fine. And then again in the future, some of the pieces that you've asked for around overtime, we do actually sometimes calculate that manually because we're so desperate for that information. And there's pockets in the organization where we are very much interested in the cost of overtime. That requires us to pull overtime numbers from the old SAP system. When I say we, it's actually payroll who has to put their attention to that and then try to manually figure out the cost. So while there are some pieces here I very much agree with, and I will share with you that we do have a dashboard in development for those pieces that I'm looking forward to being able to share in the new year. I know my team is cringing right now with that new year comment, but that's the goal. There is some data that won't be available until further into the future, and that's specifically the LMS data, the overtime cost data, training data for sure. And then the other thing I wanted to share with you is our safety and health information gets entered into a system called EHSM. It's basically an old SAP piece that we've tried to tailor make. Didn't go that well, to tell you the truth. So I'm just going to give you an example. All of the pandemic incidents would be included in the data that I try to pull on accidents, safety, etc. So we have to go in and manually remove those pieces looking at the files. Again, we are currently very involved in addressing how to deal with that, but providing that data would be an issue. And finally, apologize for how much I'm talking, but I've spent some time with your list now. The succession planning data, which is near and dear to my heart and to the CIOs as well, and we've spent a lot of time revising the succession planning program. We do not currently track that in any way. There's a very exciting module available through the new SAP program. It's also very expensive. That would allow us to track that. We have tried to track it in the past just through an Excel spreadsheet, and that was a little bit disastrous. So the program is up and running. We're excited about it. We enjoy working with our clients on it, but we do not currently track that information. Thanks.
So Caroline, is the bottom line that from your point of view, on a go forward, the legitimacy of this list is important. You can give this information on a go forward, but to go back would be difficult, is that what you're saying?
The near future, for sort of the first half of the list, there are some things on the list that I would say we're several years from being able to produce, depending on when we get LMS, a new EHSM system, and the SAP portion of the payroll piece. So a little bit half and half. But you will see some of it coming in a dashboard in the near future, which I'm excited to show you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mason?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So given what we just heard, should we not amend this motion to be request a staff report regarding establishing these metrics, right? Because what we need is, like, you know, we should get the ones that can be pulled easily, and we should understand when the timing is, and then we can hold staff to account for when the, you know, not that we'll hold your staff to account for your New Year comment you just made that they're already cringing about. But to me, you know, it's really important not to ask people to do things they can't do, right? Or that are going to suck down a huge amount of time from staff that needs to be spent on actually solving the problem. So I'm wondering if some kind of amendment might be or friendly to Councillor Russell. All right, so let's see, how do we do that there? John, use your big old brain there. Executive Standing Committee recommend that.
If I may, Mr. Mayor.
There you go.
Through you to count, I would suggest that rather than requesting a supplementary report, that you request that the information be included in future annual workforce reports as it becomes available. Does that?
That works for me.
I understood there'll be a dashboard stood up shortly, some of this information, but rather than trying to hold off and develop supplemental, let's look at it going forward as it becomes available.
That's okay, Paul? Okay. Caroline, did you want to add something to that?
One thing that we might want to also consider including in there, again, I can feel my staff cringing, but why don't we have a section on development of these pieces so that you kind of can have an eye on when those pieces are coming and how the development is going, allows us to kind of come forward and introduce new technology as it happens, you know, sort of keep you up to date on that stuff. I think that would make a more complete.
Can we take a 2-minute break just to get the wording right on that?
Yep. I think we need to get the exact wording, so we'll just take a short break. Don't anybody go. There's no need to go to the bathroom. No need to get a drink. No need to stretch your legs. We're just going to sit here while this gets worked out.
Okay, so, all right. Can you
Meanwhile, Councillor Hensby can talk to us about Akoma yesterday and how cool that was.
You
Let's just keep, okay. Okay. We're back. We're working on motion number 12.1.4, Annual Workforce Report. This is in the name of Councillor Russell. Councillor Mason and Councillor Russell were working on a friendly, I think, amendment. Have we achieved a friendly amendment? Okay. So, Councillor Mason, you put it on the floor, did you? Okay. You go ahead.
So the amendment would be to change the first section where it says 1, to include, to the extent possible, information in future annual workplace reports as it becomes available on, and then it has the list. There's the amendment where what was item C now becomes a sub of item B, which is something that Councillor Russell mentioned when he read it. And then N is added, progress updates on the provision of information not yet available would also be a part of this reporting. So that's the amendments.
Councillor...
Oh, a deletion of item 3 as well.
Deletion of item 3. Councillor Russell, that's friendly to you? Okay, so that's the motion that's on the floor. If it's friendly, everybody's okay with it. Councillor, so you're good, Councillor Mason? Councillor Morse?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The main piece of information I was looking for was just on the resignations and where they were and any details that we could have about resignations. So would that automatically be part of this change? Thank you.
Ms. Blair-Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to the councillor. Yes, with our new system, we are going to be able to drill down and properly refine that data so that we can sort of make some decisions from that. We can currently go in by business unit and sift through the data to find those pieces, and we often do in order to kind of analyze what's happening in a certain section that we have concerns about, but that will become much easier in the future, and you'll see further detail provided as we move forward.
Okay, just a bit more on that if I could. So which unit had the most resignations?
I actually don't have that data in front of me, but I could go back and look that up for you.
That would be very helpful. Thank you. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. Anybody else? Councillor Russell.
Thank you very much. One quick question on the dashboard. Carolyn, you had mentioned that that is under development. Would that be live or would it be a snapshot? I'll start with that. I might end with that too.
Mr. Mayor, through you to the councillor, it's currently a snapshot. I want it live, so we're just currently looking at how to develop that for the future. So the first one you see in the new year will be a snapshot. Okay. Pre-pandemic, we had actually created dashboards by business units that were snapshots to start to get a feel for what do we want to do in HR, what will we be able to do when EC comes. So actually this morning I was looking at the snapshot we created for P&D. A snapshot is all well and good, but it's similar to our vacancy rate, right? It changes very drastically through the organization. Yep. And with 5,000 employees and all of these unions and all of these different things going on, it really needs to be live in order to properly inform us. So that's the vision for the future, for sure.
Okay. Thank you very much. The second question, I'm not sure if this would be for Jacques or Carolyn, is would it make sense to put this list into something like a new administrative order so that it survives this motion?
My recommendation on that would not to be to put the list in. What I find, particularly as the market changes drastically, is the information that we want and the data that helps us make the decisions changes quite drastically. So some fluidity is really important. Some of these pieces will always be data that's pulled, you know, turnover rate, resignations, all of those things. But I think we do need some fluidity in order to properly respond to the labor market and different things going on in the organization.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to the councillor. So, good question. I think I would just reiterate what Caroline said, and also, I have to manage the organization, and at the end of the day, data is king, and we need to make informed decisions. And I have to come back to council every time I want to change some information source, then that's not a very useful process. So I would say, allow me to manage, and we will. Thank you.
Thank you. Ready for the question on the motion as amended? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Councillor Russell. Colleagues, there is nothing coming from the members of committee or motions. There are a couple of in-camera items. Should we move to go in camera? Moved by Councillor Russell, seconded by Councillor Blackburn. All those in favor? Opposed? We'll go in camera. Yep. Anybody want a Girl Guide cookie? Okay, we're back. Ratify the work we did in camera. Item 14.1, Councilor Mason.
I move that the Executive Standing Committee, one, adopt the recommendations as outlined in the private and confidential staff report dated September 15th, 2022, and two, direct the staff report dated October 4th, 2022, be maintained as private and confidential. I so move.
Second, Councilor Blackburn. Ready for the question? All those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Item 14.2, Councilor Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the Executive Standing Committee, one, adopt the recommendation as outlined in the private and confidential staff report dated October 4th, 2022, and two, direct staff that the staff report dated October 4th, 2022 be maintained as private and confidential. I so move.
Seconded by Council Deputy Mayor. Ready for the question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That's carried. Notices of motion. Public participation, there's nobody to speak. Our date of our next meeting is November 28. I'll accept a motion to adjourn. We are adjourned. Thank you.